Welcome to the FML podcast, the podcast on a mission to uncover actionable insights, explore the latest trends, and to catalyze your fintech's growth. Join Growth Gorilla's founder and managing director, Shameer Sachdev, and some of fintech's hardest-hitting marketers and leaders.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the FML podcast. Today we're joined by Jinesh Vohra, CEO and co-founder of Sprive. Jinesh, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Shameer. Thanks for inviting me.
No worries at all. Should we start at the top? Do you want to just sort of explain to the audience sort of who you are, what you do, and a little bit more about Sprive?
Sure. So my background is investment banking. I worked at Goldman Sachs for about 14 years, but then I left the corporate world in August 2019 to start Sprive. We help homeowners essentially pay off their mortgage faster and save interest. So if your audience is familiar with apps like Moneybox, Plum, Chip, those apps help you kind of auto-save for the purposes of like saving and investing. We're more focused on helping people pay down debt. And we kicked off with mortgages. We launched in October last year. We now have around 3,500 customers. And we're going from strength to strength.
Before we started recording, you were taking me through the onboarding process for Sprive. And I've got to say, it's probably one of, it's a really cool example of the use of open banking. Do you mind sort of detailing how the product works and the impact that therefore it has?
Sure. So it takes literally a couple of minutes to sign up, and we've tried to keep it really, really simple to kind of increase the number of people that obviously sign up and start using the product. But essentially, we have an onboarding screen that kind of gives people an idea of how much interest they'll be paying over the lifetime of their mortgage. And you'd be surprised. A lot of people underestimate how expensive interest mortgages are over like a 25 to 40-year period. And we show like how much you can save if you could put £3 a day towards your mortgage, or £5 or £10. And that's kind of the hook to kind of get people interested in going, okay, yeah, I want to be mortgage free faster. And I like the idea, like I can afford £3 a day, I can afford £5 a day. And look, wow, these are the interest savings that I can have. These are the years that I can knock off my mortgage. And then literally we ask people to essentially link their bank account. We ask people to provide their name, address, date of birth. That allows us to then automatically source their mortgage information within seconds directly from their lender. We also do kind of KYC on the background just to make sure that person, isn't someone that isn't any kind of watch list. And assuming that's all okay, we then ask them to set like a monthly min and a max. And that just helps the algorithm drive how much money they want to put towards their mortgage, how much they can afford. So some of our customers are like making thousands of pounds extra payments towards their mortgage in that goal of becoming mortgage free. Whereas you've got other customers, who are like chipping away £25, £30, £40, etc. And so you set like a minimum and a max. So, your minimum might be £25 and your max might be £75. And then based on your rate of spending determines how much we automatically set aside for you. So if, for example, in months and weeks, you're spending all your money on holidays and handbags and fancy things, then the algorithm knows, okay, you're probably going to set aside a lot less money compared to weeks where you're saving and you're spending less. And once you set that min max, essentially you're done. We've onboarded you, and then we're in a position where we can then set money aside. And then with one tap, you can make overpayments to your mortgage lender.
As I said, it's one of the probably more unique examples of leveraging open banking. So my question really, and it's probably not the most obvious question, but is, what was your inspiration? I think there's a lot of roundup apps there that sort of immediately come to mind when you there's lots of them out there. But for mortgage, it didn't seem as obvious. But I think now that you look at the product, it absolutely makes sense. But what was the inspiration behind it?
I bought my first home about 10 years ago with my wife. And I remember getting the mortgage offer document and saying for every pound that I borrow, I'd be paying 50p in interest. And thinking at the time, wow, that's a lot of cash. It was more than £150,000 in interest that we were going to be paying. And so I said to my wife, well, that doesn't sound like a good idea. Why don't we try to pay this thing off a little bit quicker so that we can save more interest? And through that journey, what I realized quite quickly is that lenders don't really want you to be kind of mortgage free. They put a lot of obstacles. And I was working 60, 70-hour weeks in the city, and I didn't really have time to go and make these kind of regular overpayments. So I used to probably make one overpayment a year, and it was very ad hoc. And taking a step back, lenders calculate interest daily, and the more regularly you make overpayments, the more interest you save and the more benefits there. And so when I kind of started looking at something, looking at doing something a bit more entrepreneurial, I kind of drew on my own personal experiences and got inspired a little bit by apps like Moneybox and Plum and Chip. I saw them doing really well. They were able to acquire a user base quite quickly. And then it started got me thinking, well, why can't we do something similar for mortgage debt?
With a lot of those, the brands that you mentioned, they're certainly targeting the more millennial Gen Z type of audience. Is that sort of similar to who you're targeting and looking to get in front of with your product?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's maybe slightly more mature than maybe their audience base, because ultimately it takes the average person a good 10, 15 years working until they can kind of afford their first home. So you're seeing a lot more people, because property prices are rising and salaries, relatively speaking, aren't. That by the time they get into the property ladder, they're in their kind of early or even mid-30s. And so I kind of an average user is 38, so it's probably a little bit older than I would expect that compared to maybe a Moneybox or a Plum for sure.
Going perhaps back a step, you've launched now. I think you launched in, was it October last year? Was it officially?
October last year, yeah. So we've been in market for about I'd say 6 months, and before that we were in closed beta. So we had like a private beta, etc. And that was where we kind of tested and worked out, what product would work and what the onboarding journey should look like and all of that good stuff. And then once we felt like, the product was in a good enough place, we then publicly launched.
What does that sort of journey, what does that journey look like for you in terms of opening up your product to the general public? How have you acquired your first sort of sets of users and driven traffic into the platform?
Yeah, so we started quite early before October in terms of generating a waitlist. So we'd seen apps that like Robinhood's a great example. They before they launched, they had these huge waitlists, etc. And so I always thought it was a good idea to build up a waitlist as well, because with FinTech, reputation is paramount, and obviously we're taking people's money and holding it and then helping them kind of make overpayments, etc. There's a lot of trust involved. And I wanted to be kind of really comfortable that everything worked and there wasn't any kind of issues in that regard. And so before kind of launching, it's nice to just be able to like control the tap. And you get a lot of feedback, and initially the product's not going to be 100%. And so if you get people who are comfortable and they recognize that they're in some sort of private beta, etc., they expect bugs. They want to be part of that journey. They want to provide feedback. They want to have a voice. And so we organically acquired most of that waitlist. We probably had about a couple of thousand people who signed up to our waitlist. And that was all done through me essentially posting on social media, mostly I would say LinkedIn. So when I started posting on LinkedIn, I initially had about 500 LinkedIn connections. I posted probably once a week. Then I kind of started to increase it to twice a week. And then I had a few advisors and mentors who were like, that's not enough. You need to be posting every day. So then I started to increase the intensity and really talk about my own personal experience, about why I started the company and my pain points with mortgages, and talking about my entrepreneurial journey, and almost like build it out in the open, so that people start to really resonate with the journey that I'm essentially on. I had a lot of people who were from corporate kind of background, financial services background, and a lot of them talk about starting up their own venture, but not a lot of people actually do it. And so that community started to grow. And actually LinkedIn's been amazing. Like if you have from 500 connections, I'm nearly up to like 3,000 LinkedIn connections, and that just sometimes I meet people at networking events and think, oh, I know about Sprive, and you're like, I've never met you. So it really works, and so we launched first versions of the product, and we iterated it, and we improved it. But when we launched, the first thing we did before, we did a full launch, the first kind of month, we just invited the people on our wait list of 2,000 people. And what you find with emails is not everyone that signed up is gonna necessarily download the app, but from that we got a good, decent kind of active user base. And then once I felt okay, the product was good, it was working, all the kind of major kind of feedback points and bugs were addressed. And we did a round of interviews as well with our early customers just to see what they liked, what they didn't like. That's when we did the public kind of real launch, and we started putting out across social media, especially, that we were about to launch and create a bit of buzz around it. But the big thing we did is we invested in PR. So my general view was that you can only launch once. And so there isn't anything like our product out in the market. Like, there's only two ways you can pay off your mortgage faster, essentially. One is do it yourself via spreadsheets and make these ad hoc bank transfers via your app, or with Sprive, and you get all the AI and you get all the additional benefits that you wouldn't get if you did it yourself. And yeah, newspapers picked it up. For us, there were two articles in particular that just really, really kind of drove a lot of traffic our way. One was This Is Money, and one is Daily Express. And what we found is that if you can convince a national press outlet, especially, to add a link to the App Store, and the article is very much focused on overpayments and why Sprive can really kind of help and why it's different, etc. You get people going, oh, this is really interesting. Oh, I want to make overpayments. Oh, and there's a link. Let me go have a look. And then you just direct crazy amounts of traffic. So I think from one article alone, we had about 4,000 app downloads within 2 days. And so it was a really good launch. I was thinking it would take us a long time to get that, and we were hit really hard. And the team were very busy, but it was good. And so PR has just been really good for us. Like, if you look at 6 months from now, every month, we get featured in national press. There's always a national press outlet that wants to talk about mortgages, and so we find angles and interesting angles on how we can have a voice. And I try to demonstrate thought leadership in that space, and that's been really good. And always pushing for the link where possible. Continuing the whole social media piece, and then we started to add influencers into our mix. So attending podcasts, getting influencers. We've got influencers who are actually using the product, so they have mortgages and they want to get rid of it, and so they're using the product and they're telling their followers, hey, look, this product's really helping me, etc. It's really cool, and it's completely free, which is obviously what customers like, and that just has been allowing us to really grow our user base.
That's really cool. I've got to ask, how many customers do you have at the moment now?
So 3,500 customers, within 6 months. I'm not sure if that's good, but we haven't essentially paid for most of those users, so I'm pretty pleased.
I think that's pretty strong, and I think just looking at the value of the PR piece and the activity there, and having a really strong launch makes all the difference. You mentioned influencers, and actually, again, before we, so for the listeners, Jinesh and I ended up sort of talking for about half an hour before we started recording the podcast, and I almost deeply regret not clicking the record button, because actually we covered a whole bunch of stuff. We started talking about sort of appearing on podcasts, and when you sort of mentioned influencers, I suppose, is appearing on podcasts part of that mix of influencers, or you sort of talking very specifically about YouTube influencers, TikTok influencers, Instagram influencers, or is a very, very sort of broad spectrum for you?
It's a broad spectrum. Ultimately, I'm really keen on leveraging two things. One is people's reach, because trying to create reach yourself, you can create your own podcast. You do a little bit on social media, and you're building the channels, and that's great, but that takes time. But it's a lot more quicker to be able to just leverage other people's reach and distribution. And the beauty of influencers is they do have not only reach, but they also have a distribution that where they're very much trusted. So there's a lot of good influencers out there, and if they say, Martin Lewis is the prime example in financial services, right? If Martin Lewis says, oh, you should use Sprive, it's a great product, I'm sure it will reign in terms of the number of downloads that we had and the number of active users that we essentially end up having. And so we're looking for people who understand the product, who are naturally going to be talking about people's personal finances. We try to just reach out and say, hey, look, we're doing this product. What do you think? And some of them will say, oh, I love this product straight away. Can we do a podcast? I have a podcast. Why don't you join it and just talk about a little bit about Sprive and what it does and how it adds value and why you should pay off your mortgage versus perhaps investing. So that works really well. Some people are like, actually, well, I like to use the product. Ultimately, I don't want to promote something that I'm not using, because that's the way I work as an influencer. I only promote things that I really, really passionately believe in. And so then they're using the product for 2 months, and then you come back to them and say, well, you're using the product now, what do you think? And they're like, okay, yeah, I actually really like it. It's really cool. And then they can kind of authentically kind of endorse it. We are looking at the next stage of influencer marketing, which is like YouTube marketing, which is where you're sponsoring videos, and obviously with financial services, if you're doing that type of marketing, you've got to make it very clear that you're getting paid to do this, etc. And so we're going to trial that because with YouTube you can get a huge amount of reach. But the key is for it to come really, make sure it comes across authentic, because if it's just a video about something completely different and nothing to do with financial services, with helping people kind of reach kind of financial freedom or get more control over life, if there's no authenticity, then it's just not going to convert and you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. And so we're targeting 4 YouTube influencers that will probably launch in May. And we're gonna give it a go. We know that influencers have worked when I've reached out directly to the influencer, and kind of a lot of times they're like, "Yeah, come to my podcast. I don't charge you anything, and you can say your piece." And that's 30 minutes of evergreen content. So not only do you get users just when the podcast is launched, but it's ongoing, because a lot of people will listen to historical podcasts once they kind of find out influencers that they really kind of have an affiliation with. So yeah, we'll test and learn, and if it works well, we'll do more of it. And if it doesn't, then we'll look to see why and then try to adjust accordingly.
I think it's a great tactic, and a lot of prospects that come speak to us that are sort of in that pre-launch phase and even post-launch, really. I think it's one thing that they should be doing a lot more of. I don't think there's any disadvantage with the CEOs, with the founders of the businesses going out there and doing a podcast tour, getting out there and getting their brand known amongst their target audience. And it only takes, a handful of podcasts to, get some real traction and get some additional downloads.
It's all about being authentic. So when I'm talking on the podcast, I'm talking about my own personal experience. The fact that I had a mortgage, I went through the kind of journey of paying it off faster. I had pain points that then resulted in me, starting this company, etc. And a lot of the listeners are like, well, I can resonate with that. I have the same pain points. I can see why this product will help me. And it's less about, oh, here's a financial product, it's really cool and you should use it. There's a lot more backstory in that, and that really helps in terms of getting that conversion. So for example, in February, I did a podcast with a guy called Pete Matthew, which some of your audience may know. He runs an influencer channel called Meaningful Money. We had a 42% download to activation rate. So 42% of people who downloaded the app became Sprive customers and are actively paying down their mortgage. So you can clearly see, if you get the right messaging and you get the right kind of channel, it can do wonders.
You mentioned obviously that you're going to be targeting a lot more sort of YouTube, in May moving forward as part of the launch. I think that's coincided with your fundraise that you mentioned. You've got obviously a few more coins in your coffers now to spend. What does the rest of your marketing mix look like going forward to try and push Sprive out there and get it into the hands of users?
Yeah, so at the moment, it's probably worth me talking a little bit about the different channel mixes that we currently do. I mentioned obviously social media and PR and the influencers piece. We're also on employee benefits platforms like XExec, which has been really good for us actually, because they have access to over 1 million kind of employees, generally quite affluent. They work at investment banks, law firms, professional services firms, etc. And they have mortgages typically, and so it's a good fit. And again, it's another platform where it's almost a trusted source, because it's almost like your employer is saying Sprive is a company that you should transact with, and so that's kind of been working quite well for us. In terms of the next kind of beyond that, what we've started to do is kind of get our user base to start spreading the word, because the word of mouth is just so key, and you want to make it as much organic as possible. And so we've been doing within the app, refer 3 friends and we'll give you £25 in your Sprive account, etc. And so 8% of our growth has been through kind of people within the app essentially referring their friends and family, etc., which is a good starting point. And obviously you want that to be higher, but I'm quite pleased with how that's working. But beyond that, I want to start looking at maybe affiliates and see how that works. I want to create an army of brand ambassadors, essentially, so people who just are really passionate about Sprive and what we're doing. And essentially, when they get us customers, we reimburse them and compensate them. I think that could be a really nice way for us to get some growth.
That naturally sort of leads on to, what does the next 12 months or longer look like for the Sprive app itself? Will you kind of limit it to its current functionality and you just want to focus on that? Or are you looking to add in other functionality moving forward?
It's really important that we're constantly improving and evolving the app. In my head, there's 2 parts to the equation. One is we want to create user growth. We also want to increase the differentiation between making overpayments via yourself versus doing it with Sprive. And so, we want to add cool features. Like next month, we'll be adding a feature that scans the market every day for better mortgage deals. So on a given day, there's like 20,000 mortgage products across 90 lenders. It's a real pain to be able to actually work out which is the best deal that you're eligible for and when's the right time to switch. And the beauty of Sprive is when you sign up, we have access to all the information that essentially a lender needs to underwrite a mortgage. And so we can really look at your financial situation, look at the products in the market, and then help you get the right product so that you can save the most amount of money. And obviously, if you're saving and paying less interest, then that gives you more cash to then pay down your mortgage quicker, and ultimately you get you to the goal of becoming mortgage free. So that will come out next month. We want people to get the benefit because they're paying down debt. It's a good thing. So from a credit risk standpoint, we're talking to credit bureaus to see if we can give our customers a credit score boost, which is also great because when you're looking to get a mortgage, lenders look at essentially your credit rating, and the better your credit rating, the cheaper and better deals you can get access to. So again, that's another differentiation. Like if you were paying off your mortgage yourself, you wouldn't get a credit score boost with Sprive. You're starting to get those advantages. I love to do stuff where through open banking, we can kind of get access to what retailers you're spending your money with and start giving you cash back with retailers that we have essentially relationships with. So you can imagine M&S, you're spending money, and every time you spend money with M&S, because you're a Sprive customer, you get an extra bit of cash in your Sprive account, and then that can help you kind of pay down your mortgage faster. And we want to find lots of different ways of helping people save money. So even, for example, your home insurance or your car insurance or your pet insurance, hey, we just found you a better deal. You're going to pay £25 less than what you currently pay. Help you get that. And then do you want to pocket that £25 and that saving and put it towards your paying off your mortgage faster, and create that loop of helping people just find different ways so that they can get to their goal sooner. And the goal there will be obviously more value add. So easier to market the product. I think the best marketing you can do is have a great product that people love, because then you've got more people who download the app, will then turn into active customers, who then actually become in a form paying customers so that you can generate revenue. You've got lower churn. Lower churn means that you're not wasting money on marketing. Ultimately, you keep trying to recover your customers because you keep losing them every month. So and creating that sticky product is super important. So that's one side of definitely one side of the equation. And we want to obviously monetize the app. And so the more financial products we can sell on the app with our engaged user base that's relevant, I think would be really cool. So, for example, 20% of our customers right now are landlords. So they have buy-to-let mortgages and residential mortgages. And there's no reason why over time we might not offer helping people pay off like their buy-to-let mortgages faster. But those landlords might need help in terms of rent guarantee insurance, for example. So maybe we sell that within the app, or they might have tenants who they want to do due diligence on, and we can do background checks for them, etc., etc. There's a lot of additional things that we can add that ultimately adds value to our customers, and but also helps us monetize because the app is completely free. So we need to make sure that we've got a very engaged user base that ultimately we can generate revenue of it. Because ultimately, if you can't do that, then the business would fail over the medium to long run.
I suppose initially when I looked at the product, I did sort of think, okay, where's Sprive going to go from here? And I thought, a few avenues, but actually now that you kind of detailed it, I suppose it's made me realize actually there's a lot of avenue, a lot of opportunity for growth in that particular area. How quickly do you want to move along that path though? Or do you want to sort of nail down and bed down the sort of mortgage roundup piece first until you hit X number of users? Or are you kind of going, all guns blazing and just building out as much functionality as possible as quickly as possible?
I think it's a balance. I feel like, we spend a lot of time on the overpayments piece. We were on closed beta for a while. We have like a 77% retention rate, which is, I don't think it's too bad. We can improve it for sure, but I think we're in a good place. So I think it's time for us that's why we're working on this whole scan the market every day for better deals. And that will go into the app next month. And then we'll see how that's working. And then once we feel that's kind of optimized and it's working in a decent way, you've got to be kind of super data driven, right, on these things. But if the data is showing that, okay, it's performing quite well, then you move on to the next thing. You can always then come back and optimize things. And as your headcount grows, you can work on optimizing different areas or features that you've worked on. But I like to move as quickly as possible without going so quickly that ultimately the things that you've done are just not good enough. I'm a firm believer of like an 80-20 rule. And so if we can get to a place where it's working pretty well, then you start working on the next thing. And what will happen is it's all about getting that user feedback. So as long as you've got that feedback loop with your customers, where your customers are essentially dictating, and giving you feedback on what they like and what they don't like, and if there are things that you built and then you need to like improve them, generally your customers will tell you lots of different ways you can do that. But for us, that's how we typically build anything. Any big features that we essentially roll out, we'll do at least 20 user customer interviews. And through that process, we end up finding that we get to a pretty good place. And then they use the product, and then we get more feedback, and we iterate accordingly.
I'm curious, when you're doing this sort of customer interviews, do you have a Sprive beta, like, core 20 or 30 people that you always go to? Or do you tend to sort of mix it up and try and sort of get, views and opinions of new people every time? And I suppose, secondly to that, are these sort of structured interviews that you're doing, sort of in-depth interviews, 30 to 45 minutes, or you tend to do sort of more, surveys where you're pushing it out to the entire customer base?
I found surveys you don't get a lot of value from those. I think the interviews work really well. We tend to come up with like a little bit of a script of what questions we want to ask. Depending on the person, I think the maximum we get is half an hour. After that, I think you're pushing it. Some people, 15 minutes, they'll give you 15 minutes and that's that. But because they're kind of keen to be part of something new and they believe in the product, etc., you can generally get 30 minutes. And we tend to create an interactive version. So it's not the app, but like we'll do screen share and we'll show the screens and how it would look, etc., and the way we plan to build it. And then we'll kind of go through our list of questions. But we try to make sure we're not leading the individual, and make it very clear that they can say anything, and because some people are kind of a bit too polite, and they won't necessarily tell you what they think. And so you need to create that environment where they understand you can rip it apart, and they're not going to take offense. And actually, that's really helpful if you just tell us honestly what you think. What you tend to find is you get a lot of feedback on like the first 5, and then we kind of go, okay, which ones do we think are material, and then we'll make changes. And so through that 20 interview process, the product's getting like better and better and better. And there's an element of judgment. So we'll go through the bits of feedback we've got. We'll look for consistency. And we'll also, there's an element of our judgment as well. So some things we'll say, we'll ignore that. But these ones we think are right. And what you find is as you get towards like the 50 and 20, then everyone's like, oh, it's super clear, I understand. And then you're getting into a much better place. And in terms of your question around, like, is it the same people, etc.? Initially, probably yes, because we had a small pool to work with. We were like beta and we were just starting, and a lot of the people were from my network. And they know that I'm doing something different, and they want me to help me succeed. And they've got mortgages, and they do it almost because you're like begging them to to kind of help, etc. But then you start to build a user base, and then you have real people who you don't know, and that's when we typically send out an email, and we'll say to our user base, hey, we're doing a new feature. We'd love 10 minutes of your time, 15 minutes of your time. Can you book an appointment, etc. And then we'll get some people, and then most people obviously would ignore it because people are busy. And then we'll offer a bit of cash incentive. So, why don't you jump on a call and we'll give you like an Amazon voucher, etc. And then you get a few more people, and then you've got people who are just like, I love what you're doing. Anytime, I'm happy to jump on a call anytime. Almost what you call your super users. Yeah. And we have like a database, and we mark who our super users are, so we know who they are, and we'll reach out to them. And yeah, that's typically the way we do it.
What's been the most surprising bit of feedback that you've got from your surveys, from your interviews?
Yeah, I mean, look, the first version of the app wasn't open banking enabled. Maybe we were trying to do too many things on day one. But when we initially spoke to a lot of people, they were like, open banking, not sure about that. I'd prefer to just type in my mortgage information, etc., and have a little bit more control. And so we created that version of the app because that was what we were getting through a lot of the interviews, etc. And obviously, you're not getting thousands of people; you're getting a small spectrum of people, and necessarily they might not even be your target market. But then when it came to we launched that product, and it was very early in our journey. and we learned a lot from it. I don't think it was wasted. And we even have that version of the app for people who, for certain corner cases. But what we found in reality is that people, it's too manual, it's too much intensive, like asking people to type in mortgage information, asking people to manually make payments when life gets busy, and essentially it all makes sense when they're talking to someone, but in reality, we found very few people as a standalone product would essentially use that, and the retention rate was pretty poor. So that was a good example where there's an element of getting kind of feedback, but there's an element of judgment as well, and having your business hat on to kind of understand. People might say something, but sometimes people don't know what they want, and so you've got to bear that in mind.
I think that's a great anecdote, really. And it's a huge amount of judgment there that actually sometimes you've got to stay the course, and you've got to force people through your onboarding journey, through your funnel, whatever it is. I think the point there is that your retention rate was severely impacted by appeasing the user, actually was detrimental to the product. That's a great example. The bit I was going to kind of go back to on the open banking piece is probably twofold. I think one is the trust element. I think open banking is becoming a little bit more prevalent now, and people are getting more used to it. I mean, even the HMRC have finally adopted open banking to pay to pay NI contributions and PAYE contributions and all of that sort of stuff. So it's getting out there. But obviously, from your perspective, you're still asking, and not everybody understands that it is encrypted, etc. So they still need to build up trust with Sprive in order to get them through that part of the funnel. What sort of tactics or what approach are you taking around that to kind of strengthen that credibility for Sprive and to help that kind of piece of the puzzle?
There's two parts to that. So one is your targeting. So if you can target people that are more likely to be comfortable with open banking, then it becomes less of a hurdle, because there are around 4 million people that have in some form or shape used open banking. And so if they're more familiar with it, it becomes less scary. And so you obviously get less drop-offs. And so we've done that a little bit with our targeting. But some of our targeting has been there's no targeting, it's just PR, and that's national press, etc. And you get all ends of the spectrum. And some people do find it very scary. And we try to use best practices in terms of the messaging within the app, etc. Understanding why we need access to it, I think always helps, and why it's secure, and that educational piece. And some people will read it, and some people automatically just, there's a mental hurdle. And so that's where it comes to these trusted sources. How do they hear about Sprive? And if they Google Sprive, what do they find? A lot of people who are not sure, but they like what they see, will do their own independent research. If it's not a referral from a friend. We all do it in our personal lives. Where you Google and what do you see? And with Sprive, I like to think if you Google Sprive, you'll see some really good content out there, etc. Obviously regulated, etc. And so that's another way of getting people comfortable. But you do get drop-offs. The open banking piece is one of probably the biggest areas where we get people going, actually no, that's not something I'm going to do. And that's fine. At that point in time, we weren't able to convince that customer. But as we add more features, as we improve our brand, as we get more customers using the app, that maybe they'll come back to it and say, well, actually now if they feel like they've got a bit more traction, there's a little bit more trust there, and then that starts to improve over time. And the thing, you add more features you link your bank account, I'm getting a credit score boost. Oh, that's pretty nice. Oh, I like that. Let me do that. So not only am I saving thousands of pounds on my mortgage and I'm paying it off earlier, but I can get a credit score boost. And so that, again, the more you tip over the value exchange, I can get cash back at M&S. I spend lots at M&S, or the more you'll start to even increase those. And even those people that are a little bit skeptical, but let me give this a try. And that helps. The other big thing I try to do is in any marketing we have, I mention that you have to link your bank account, so it doesn't become a huge surprise. So we've got on our website, if you go to sprive.com, there's a play button on our landing page, and there's a YouTube video that comes up. And if you look at that, we say link your bank account, we automatically set money aside. So automatically, you know that, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to link my bank account. I'm going to be comfortable with that. So mentally, they're already kind of a little bit more prepared. It's not that shock when they come to the app that why are you asking me to just share that level of data? Again, with the influencers that we're doing, the YouTube campaigns next month, on the brief, we explain that you need to explain how it works, and that link your bank account is part of it. But almost them kind of going, I've done it, and they're almost showing you in the video that they're linking their bank account, they're comfortable. And that helps. If you're watching that and you go, I really like this app, and the person I trust is using it and they're happy to link their bank account, well, so am I. And that then kind of reduces the number of drop-offs that you get.
Some great tips and advice there. Last question before we kind of head into a sort of quick fire round, really. Looking back on your journey from when you started Sprive, what do you think you would have done differently?
Well, first of all, I'd wish that COVID never happened, because that was a huge curveball that I could have done without. But I talked about building that non-open banking version of the product. I probably wouldn't have gone my gut and not built that. You read all these books and they say, be agile and listen to your customers, etc., etc. And the product that we have now is a lot more evolved. It's a lot more expensive to build. The first version of the app, they tend to say, if you read most startup books, is the first version of the product is just terrible, but just get it out there, etc. And that's what we did. But I felt like it took a lot of time to get there, and it was expensive. And in hindsight, now that I know that this product is actually a product that people love, and we've got 4.8 on the App Store rating for iOS, etc. And that again is another thing that kind of helps build trust. But if I knew that on day one, I would have not spent a lot of energy building that first version of the product. I would have gone straight to the product that we have now today. And we also we did learn a few things, but we'd have saved money and time.
No, that's great advice. So let's jump into our kind of quick fire round. So I've got a handful of questions. I'm going to change it up this week on the back of some feedback. So what podcasts are you listening to at the moment?
I would say I'm listening to personal finance podcasts, conversational money, things like meaningful money. But mostly I'm listening to those because I'm kind of keen to understand what they're talking about when they select to mortgages, and I'm looking to get into other podcasts. So I'm trying to understand their content so that I can then, when I talk to them, we can have a good conversation, etc. I've got two children and I'm doing Sprive, so it's hard to kind of get that time. I don't have a commute as well, so back in the day when I was in the city, you have your headphones and you're on your way to work, and it was a nice opportunity on the train to listen to something. But I'll be honest with you, there isn't one podcast that I'm an avid follower of.
What books are you reading at the moment, or what book are you reading at the moment?
I should have a book, but at the moment I'm not reading. I'm not reading anything. In the beginning, I kind of read a few startup books, and that was great. But I just felt again, lack of time. So I've been focusing on just the business. I think the main thing I say is the books are great, and my CEO is a good example. He reads so many books, and he's always telling me, "Read this book, Jinesh." It's amazing. But I tend to learn through networking and talking to people. So that's where my focus is. And I have problems that I need to solve, and so I find who do I know within my network that I trust, that I think can help me solve that problem. And for example, my background is not marketing, but I'm responsible for marketing at Sprive. Now we're hiring, our first. We're looking for someone in the marketing space. Someone who can kind of really take over and take us to the next level. Now that we're pretty much close to closing our next fundraise. But yeah, right now I've done what I've done and got the 3,500 customers, etc. through getting mentors, seeing what other entrepreneurs are doing, etc., and learning that way. So I'm not a hardcore book reader. I learn organically.
No, that's cool. I have my moments. I tend to I'll read 3 or 4 books, and then suddenly not touch one for 6 months, and then go through a phase where I'm reading a couple. Other than the Sprive app, what's your favourite FinTech app that you're using at the moment?
Oh, I did use apps like Plum, and I did like that when I had it. PensionBee, I think, is a really cool app. I used to use a lot of open banking apps, obviously Yolt, but that's no longer around. In terms of neobanks, so Starling, Monzos, Revoluts, those I actively use. Love Revolut in terms of when I'm going away or making international payments, etc., etc. It's a lot more cost effective, so that's pretty cool. I love free trade. The fact that you can buy stocks, etc., and it's it's so cost effective compared to other ways of conventional ways of doing it. I think the general fintechs that do really well, it's very clear what the benefits are of using that app. So, for example, like free trade, it's essentially you can buy stocks for free, and ultimately the alternatives were you're paying these high fees and commissions, etc., etc. So it was an obvious benefit that's a really cool app to use. Likewise, Revolut, making international payments, you're getting charged such a spread on the FX rates, and Revolut comes in and you can essentially get the spot rate on your FX transactions. And again, it was like a no-brainer. Well, I'm going to use Revolut, and I think the apps that do that tend to do really, really well. And so that's what we're trying to do with Sprive, is make it a complete no-brainer between paying off your mortgage yourself versus using our app, so that it's there's something like 5 million people that make overpayments at some point in their life, and I want all those 5 million people to be using Sprive.
Who within the fintech or startup world would you most like to go out to lunch with?
So I'd probably say like Pension B, there's Romy there. I think she IPO'd and made a good ton of cash. So I'd definitely like to sit down with her and learn from her. I think so obviously Tom at Monzo, I know he's left, but the fact that he created such a great B2C business and got so many kind of users so passionate about the brand, etc. I'd love to be able to sit down with him and get his 2 cents, especially because we're looking to like hire and build a marketing team, etc., etc. And we're focusing very much on organic. My view is paid is always there. So we could always do some performance marketing, but it's cold. So it ends up becoming, in my view, it's a lot more expensive. So the trust is a big thing. So we're trying to go double down on the organic, etc. And obviously, time will tell whether that's the right strategy. But that's the way we're kind of, at least initially, investing. It's worked really well for us. And I feel like if I can do that, and I'm not, my background's not marketing, then once we have a really good marketing team, I think we can really fly. Those two have kind of been there and done that in terms of B2C, fintech apps. So I think I'd love to sit down with them and get their thoughts, because there's so many fintech apps out there, and most of them don't, unfortunately, do very well. So I think those two would be my preference.
Cool. That's my last question is, and probably my favourite question. What's one thing I haven't asked that you perhaps think I should have asked?
No, I think you've been great. I mean, you've asked me so many questions. I don't think there's anything else that I would really want to add. Perfect.
Jinesh, thank you very much for coming on today. That was brilliant. We covered an awful lot, and I think there's some really interesting sort of tips and advice that could be taken from all your answers today. Thanks for joining us.
Brilliant, no, thanks for having me.
The FML podcast is brought to you by Growth Gorilla. To find out how our marketing growth experts can boost your fintech's growth, head to growthgorilla.co.uk. And make sure to search for the FML podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Growth Gorilla, thanks for listening.